You know, for over half a century, the moon's just been up there, a silent neighbor. We went, we planted some flags, and then that was it. We just stopped. But now, NASA's getting ready to go back. And this time, it is not for a quick visit. No, we're talking about something way bigger, a permanent base right on the lunar surface. So yeah, let's get into what this really means, because it's a huge deal.
And this right here, this single quote from the head of NASA, it signals a massive shift, a total game changer. This isn't just, oh, let's do another mission. Nope. This is about starting a full-blown construction project on another world. It's not just talk, it's a real, fundamental change in strategy. The new priority is building a permanent home on the moon.
I mean, it has been a long time. The last time a human walked on the moon was way back in 1972. So you have to ask, what happened? Why did what was arguably the most ambitious exploration program in human history just stop? Well, to really get where we're going, we first have to look back and understand why we left in the first place.
And the answer, like it so often is, really comes down to money. The original Apollo program, I mean, what an incredible achievement. But it came with an absolutely monumental price tag. And that financial reality has basically defined the limits of our space exploration for decades since.
Check out this number, $300 billion. That's what the Apollo program would cost in today's money. It's just staggering. Towards the end of the program, it cost over $500 million for every single day an astronaut spent on the surface. So while it was an unbelievable feat of engineering, the whole model was just way too expensive to keep going.
So, you see, for all its glory, the Apollo way of doing things was basically a dead end for any kind of long-term exploration. The public, the politicians, they just lost the appetite for that level of spending. And every attempt to go back since then, it's always hit the same wall. It's just too expensive. To go back and actually stay this time, NASA knew it needed a completely new playbook.
And that new playbook? It's called the Artemis program. This is the modern-day effort to finally solve the problems that have kept us grounded for half a century. The goal is to return humans to the moon, and this time, it's for good.
And this really gets to the core of it all. The whole philosophy is different now. Artemis isn't about quick trips to plant some flags and grab some rocks. It's about building a lasting, enduring presence. It's about figuring out how to actually live and work on another world. Creating the foundation for a whole new off-world economy, and eventually a stepping stone to places even further out.
Okay, so for years, the absolute centerpiece of the Artemis plan was something called the Lunar Gateway. The idea was pretty straightforward. Build a small space station that would orbit the moon. Astronauts would fly to the Gateway in their Orion capsule and then use it as a kind of pit stop, a staging point, before heading down to the surface. And for a long time, everybody thought, yep, that's the plan. Until, suddenly, it wasn't.
Because pretty recently, NASA made a huge announcement, one that completely changed the future of lunar exploration and shifted the entire focus of the program. That orbiting moon station, the project that was the core of the plan for years, was suddenly put on pause. Now, a moon base was always the long-term goal, but NASA basically decided that to get boots on the ground as efficiently as possible, they had to shift their resources. Instead of building an orbital outpost first, the new focus is to go directly to the lunar surface.
This is a really fundamental change in thinking. The old plan was totally orbit first. Build the gateway, then worry about landing. The new plan? It's surface first. Focus everything on getting a foothold on the moon itself. And why the big switch? Well, it's pretty simple, really. Every single dollar in every rocket launch spent building an orbiting station is a dollar in a launch you can't spend on actual surface hardware. So this new approach is just a faster, more direct route to getting that permanent base built.
Okay, so if the big orbiting station's on the back burner, how exactly are we going to build a base on the surface? Well, NASA has a pretty clear three-phase plan for that.
It's all about taking this one step at a time, which makes a lot of sense. Phase 1 is all robotic. We'll send up rovers and instruments to scout out the best spots and test out all the tech we're going to need, for power, communications, navigation, all that stuff. Then, in Phase 2, we start sending up the early infrastructure. Think semi-habitable structures and vehicles, enough to support astronauts on recurring trips. And finally, Phase 3. That's the big one. That's when we land the heavy-duty, permanent habitats that we need to have a continuous human presence on the moon.
So what are the tools for the job? What hardware do we need? Well, first, you need the absolute raw power of the massive Space Launch System, or SLS rocket, just to get off Earth. Then, the crew travels in the Orion capsule.
To get from lunar orbit down to the surface, you need a specialized ship, the Human Landing System. And once you're actually there, you're not just going to stand around. You'll be exploring with something called the Lunar Terrain Vehicle, or LTV.
And here's a fantastic look at that Orion spacecraft. This is from its successful uncrewed test flight, Artemis I. So this vehicle has already proven technology. It's ready to go. It'll be the cruise ride from Earth all the way to lunar orbit, and that's where they'll rendezvous with their lander to take them down to the surface.
And speaking of that ride down to the surface, this is where things get really interesting. See, NASA is sparking some competition here. They've given contracts to both SpaceX for a version of its massive Starship and to Blue Origin for their Blue Moon lander. The whole point of this competition is to speed up innovation and hopefully drive down the costs for what is probably the single most critical piece of this entire puzzle, actually landing people safely on the moon.
Which brings us right back to the biggest question of all, doesn't it? We've tried to go back to the moon before, and those plans just fizzled out. The economics never worked. So what on earth makes this new Moonbase plan any more sustainable than all those other efforts from the past?
Well, the answer really lies in a totally new model. It's built on two main pillars: partnerships. First up, you have commercial partnerships. NASA is leaning on innovative private companies to build crucial hardware faster and cheaper. And second, there are deep international partnerships. Space agencies from Europe, Japan, and Canada are all chipping in, contributing really essential hardware like rovers and habitats.
So when you boil it all down, America isn't trying to do this alone this time. By sharing the enormous cost and the incredible technical challenges with all these different commercial and international partners, NASA is building a program that's designed from the very beginning to be financially sustainable for the long haul. That's the key.
Of course, anytime you start talking about going back to the moon, another huge question always pops up. If we're putting all this time, all this money and effort into building a moon base, does that mean the dream of sending humans to Mars is getting put on the back burner?
Actually, not at all. In fact, NASA's official thinking is the complete opposite. They see the moon as a vital proving ground. It's the perfect place to test out all the technologies we're going to need for Mars: the habitats, the life support, power systems, all of it. It's where we'll learn the skills for long-duration survival that we absolutely have to master before we even think about attempting that much longer, much more dangerous journey to Mars. So yeah, the road to the red planet, it runs right through the moon.
So what this all means is that the Artemis program is a real commitment to finally making that decades-old dream of a permanent home on the moon a reality. The plan is definitely ambitious, but the strategy feels a lot smarter this time around, and the technology is finally within our grasp. But make no mistake, the challenge is still immense. This is our shot at humanity's first moon base, if we can keep it.